launched! You can forget about that! I don't think that ball's come down yet. Made a good lane for Spooner with the backhander. That's nasty. Smack to center, long run. Rottenberg, oh, she caught it! Stop. That surely must be illegal. We are back for episode 14 of White Noise Sports with Tanner White. I wasn't concerned at all about episode 13 being unlucky, something weird happening to it, and I hope you weren't either. I just narrowly missed releasing it, though, on Friday the 13th, seeing as last Friday was the 14th. Bullet dodged. The focus of last week's episode, Caitlin Clark Olympic snub. I told you that it's going to bring the viewership down, but hopefully it does give her motivation for the next Olympic cycle. Then I went game by game to break down the NBA Finals to that point and describe this Boston massacre that just occurred. Finally, I glanced over the Stanley Cup Finals and told everyone how little I know about hockey. Sue me. Nothing's changed there, but I am generally aware enough to know how impressive the Oilers' comeback has been so far. That's all I'm really going to say about it until that series ends. To start off this episode, I'm going to talk about the series that I know hopefully a bit more about. It's really cool how similar the situations were in the NBA and the NHL Finals at one point. The Panthers and Celtics both looked absolutely unbeatable for 3 games. Then they both got blown out in hilarious fashion in Game 4s. One of them at least was able to put the series to bed. I question how much analysis I really need to put into Game 4 of the NBA Finals between the Celtics and the Mavs. Dallas led by as many as 48 points. They won every statistical category that matters, and both teams got to completely empty their benches in the second half. The weirdest notes from this game, if you didn't watch it, if I told you that Kyrie and Luka would shoot 1 for 14 combined from 3, would you ever believe me that Dallas won that game? Would you believe that Jason Tatum was the Celtics' leading scorer? I'm not done yet. Would you believe that Jason Tatum was the Celtics' leading scorer with only 15 points? Even if you did watch the game, that doesn't sound right. And lastly, would you believe Tim Hardaway Jr. was the leading scorer in the second half of the game with 15 points? He only played the fourth quarter. Of course, in that quarter, he shot 5 of 7 from 3. But the point is, a lot of bonkers statistics. None of this stuff even sounds real to me, but that's the most fun part about statistics. It's the outliers. The 98 Bulls still hold the record for the biggest margin of victory in a finals game with 42 points. However, Game 4 really pushed that envelope. I see this series as a great sports psychology insight, if you will. It's just too difficult in almost all circumstances to beat a team 4 straight games. Everyone on the other team's a professional athlete. They have the same access to training, nutrition, recovery, all that stuff. From the tip in Game 4, you just knew that the Celtics didn't show up. I still think the injury to Kristaps Porzingis was weighing on their minds a little bit, not knowing how he'd play, what his role would be. He deserved to be out there in the middle of their run, metaphorically, but also literally as the center. Boston got to fly home and refocus after Game 4. To me, that meant that there was no way this series was going any longer than 5. It's the home court advantage combined with a little boxing analogy that I like, and something that my college defensive coordinator used to say. If you let any fight go to the cards, you never know what side of the decision you'll be on, even if it feels like you were way ahead. If you knock somebody out cold, there's no debate. The thing is, it took until Game 5 for that knockout. Everything Boston was so good at this year, this was the perfect storm. That three-pointer at the halftime buzzer by the Celtics' Peyton Pritchard, the backup point guard that everyone loves to hate for some reason, I still don't get it. It was a microcosm of the series and the whole year for Boston. They had the entire rotation working, they shot it well, as always. They hit 12 threes in the first half, and Dallas went cold again when it mattered most. The Celtics' 5-out action left everybody open, and when they had to set some screens and make some cuts, the passing was super crisp. They only turned it over 4 times. Jason Tatum is now a 6'8" point guard. Deal with it. Al Horford is 6'9", and he's listed as a center, but he shoots the 3 better than your team's best 2 guard. Derek White's a 6'4" 2 guard that blocks shots like a center. Make it make sense. They went from preseason favorites to 64 wins to a 5-game finals win. They earned it all. They should be pretty fondly remembered among some of the best championship teams in NBA history now. Boston now has 18 championships in their history, breaking a tie with the Lakers for most all time. and they've got a pretty good claim to being one of the best sports franchises in American history. Love it, hate it, or indifferent. Now, as we go to review my predictions again, I missed on a big majority of these for the finals. For Boston, some of them came close, some of them not so much. At the time, I didn't like it, and I still don't think I like Jaylen Brown winning Finals MVP, so I'm not upset about getting that one wrong. Of course, I thought it would be Jason Tatum. If there were ever a year to not choose an MVP, to change that entire process and just give it to a whole team symbolically, this would have been the year. I also thought the Celtics would shoot 50% from three at least once in the series. They were 10 for 21 at halftime of Game 5. So hear me out, that absolutely could have happened. The only thing is they went cold in the second half, but that would have been another really fun one. Jason Tatum missed out on a triple-double in Game 5 by 2 rebounds, but had 11 more assists and 31 points. Yet Jaylen Brown was the MVP. Okay then. For the Mavericks predictions, the Kyrie and Luka show was still on full display, but only if the display was a circus. The two had their moments. They combined to average 49 points a game, way short of their potential and what I predicted, but any other duo would be absolutely thrilled with that. They scored almost exactly as much as the other 13 guys on the roster combined. Have we not figured out yet that balanced teams are the ones that win championships? I was high on PJ Washington after how well he played in the conference finals, but he only ended up shooting 41% from the floor and scoring just over 10 points a game. The one prediction that I have to at least claim as a win was the one really quirky one. I said back in episode 12 that Dallas could outscore the Celtics for the series and still lose. Through the first 3 games, Boston had a total margin of victory of 32 points. Then they got blown out by 38. I was correct all the way up to Game 5. If Game 5 had been close at all, this one would have hit, so I'll count it. There were no Maverick ejections. Credit to Luka for how well he handled the loss afterward, too. He was the best player in the playoff field in general, and in the finals in particular. He never complained about the massive workload, and you've probably seen the stats bouncing around that basically showed Luka led the playoffs in everything except block shots. I felt like we saw him mature a ton during this playoff run. If Dallas can reload, bring in another quality shooter, and get back to the finals, he'll get a ring and probably an MVP in the finals someday. I imagine this was Kyrie's last chance. The basketball gods decided it was not to be. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he comes back to Dallas and wants to play the rest of his career there, but maybe not. Time will tell, and time is also undefeated. That's everything I have for this year's NBA Finals. Now, you like controversy, yes? We have controversy hot and fresh off the grill. A question many people have to ask themselves before taking on some big challenge. Are you ready to put your money where your mouth is? What I mean is, we're talking about gambling in sports. You can't go half an hour now watching any major TV networks without seeing sportsbook ads. The rules have changed for the average person in so many ways. I dug into the history of sportsbooks a bit, and I heard about the Professional and Amateur Sports Protection Act of 1992. So when this was signed, states were prevented from establishing legal sportsbooks, but some of the old institutions were grandfathered in, sort of, and allowed to stay, like Las Vegas, of course. The Supreme Court took on PASPA, if you will, in 2018 and overturned the ruling. From there, all bets were off, and by off, I mean on, naturally. 37 states now have legal sportsbooks in operation. A few that don't might surprise you as you look at the map, like Texas, Alabama, Oklahoma. I'm not certain if there's really any rhyme or reason to why a state does or doesn't decide to have betting, but I am certain that players are getting popped at a pretty shocking rate. For my money, the most prominent name in recent history, at least, to be disciplined over gambling was then Falcons receiver Calvin Ridley. Ridley only played 5 games in 2021, then he left the team for what he called mental health reasons. Valid, right? But after leaving the team, he was found to have placed bets on NFL games for the rest of that year. That drew a 1-year suspension, making him miss all of the next year, 2022. He claimed on Twitter or X or the Elon Musk app, whatever you want to call it, that he only bet $1,500. I'm not certain if the league could back up that number or not, but I am certain that every single NFL player is aware that they're not allowed to bet on NFL games, even ones that don't involve their team. The question I struggle with a lot whenever one of these stories breaks is, should they be banned on betting from all other sports? They can't affect the outcome of games in any other sport, and they probably don't have any kind of insider access or knowledge. Tons of other players have been popped in various sports recently for gambling too. From older to more recent, the list kind of reads like this. Lions wide receivers Quintez Cephas, Jamison Williams, and safety CJ Moore all got suspended at least 6 games in 2023. Some of those bets in question were on NFL games and some weren't. Some of them were just placed at the Lions training facility, as I understand it. Another bizarre incident from late March of this year, the Dodgers' Shohei Ohtani, the insane two-way phenomenon, fired his interpreter, I believe his name is Ippei Mizuhara, for embezzling $16 million of Ohtani's money. He is alleged to have used most of it to cover his insane gambling debts. He's now in an absolute heap of legal trouble, and the fallout from that is still to be determined. Raptors big man Jontay Porter got one of the roughest treatments not long after. He got a lifetime ban and now a criminal investigation. Porter was found to have limited his own minutes played in certain games with the Raptors. He apparently gave information about his health to known bettors, and like so many other guys, placed bets on other games in his own sport. NBA Commissioner and possible supervillain Adam Silver got his ban hammer out on April 17th. The legal proceedings in Canada are just getting started as well. His attorney said he's been getting treatment for a gambling addiction. Now, if that's true, then go ahead and be sympathetic, and I probably will be too, to be honest. However, if that's just a legal defense tactic, then I feel like the lifetime ban would probably stick if he appeals it, and I can't say I feel particularly bad for him. Again, everyone knows that they're not allowed to do this. This is no big surprise. Now for the most recent entries in the Book of Misdeeds. Yes, it's a bit tragic to think how much trouble your heroes are getting up to. Padres shortstop Tucupita Marcano just got hit with his own lifetime ban. He was on the injured list the entire season to this point, rehabbing a torn ACL from last July. I would imagine he now has the, shall we say, dubious record for the most bets placed among all the athletes that have ever been popped, perhaps besides Pete Rose. Marcano placed 387 bets between October of 2022 and November of 2023. The thing that blows me away here is that he allegedly only won 4.3% of all his bets. That is just a cosmic sign that what you are doing isn't working. Now, he mostly bet on his own team's games. Therein lies the big problem, right? A good chunk of those bets were parlays, too. Look, I like guys that are aggressive and swing for the fences sometimes, but this is an entirely new level. He liked to bet on things like the money lines and run totals. You would think that a major league player with multiple years of experience could get a bit more than 4.3% of them right. I know that's not the point, but I just have to slip that in because that's a kind of embarrassing figure. Along with Tucupita Marcano, 4 other minor or sort of fringe major leaguers got 1-year suspensions, meaning that they did place bets on MLB games, but not ones that they or their team were involved in. The news about any one player doesn't really drop my jaw, with gambling being so prevalent and advertised and accepted, all of that, right? The one that does shock me is MLB umpire Pat Hoberg. Unlike any of the recently banned players, Hoberg does deny ever betting on baseball, and his appeal's coming soon. Almost everyone else has been caught red-handed. They've had to admit it, and whatever punishment comes their way, they take. It's just because the rules are so clearly spelled out. The MLB press release said that the investigation into Hoberg started during spring training, and as such, he's essentially been on leave. He hasn't umpired a game this year. He's been a full-time ump since 2017, made his debut in 2014, and Hoberg's probably known for what might be the greatest umpire performance in history, to his credit, in Game 2 of the 2022 World Series. He finished that game with 100% perfect accuracy, calling every ball in strike perfectly. To my knowledge, that's the only time an MLB umpire's ever done that, and for that reason, his pure umpiring skill, and how good his career rating is in calling balls and strikes, how rarely he has calls overturned on safe and out calls, that kind of thing. I really hope he didn't do anything wrong. We don't need any more controversy in modern sports, although we keep getting, more modern, more creative ones all the time. It's such a phenomenon. This whole sports betting saga is just one of those books that you can't put down and you really need to know how it ends. How long do they wait before they're going to relax the rules? It seems almost inevitable at some point, right? Can they retroactively unpunish guys that had previously been in trouble? I'm not even going to try and suggest a framework that could benefit both the leagues and the players and the viewers or the fans. I don't know if that can even be done. For the most part, my take on it is, athletes sign contracts of service, and they are paid mind-numbing, unbelievable money that many people can't even fathom. For that reason, I feel like I'm okay with the league controlling some of the things they can and can't do, even sort of in their free time, just because they're still members of their league. They still have obligations in those contracts, even when they're not out there on the field making plays. Of course, I'll put a question in the Q&A or maybe the poll section and get everybody's thoughts on this whole sports betting deal, but there's my 2 cents. So ends episode 14 of White Noise Sports with Tanner White. If you couldn't tell, the technical difficulties with the video debut of the show are still being dealt with. It comes down to some audio recording mistakes on my end, and I can't be sure that it's salvageable at this point. If that's the case, I'll make the call soon and either try and re-record, control some more variables, or just generally be better prepared. Fingers crossed there. I'll keep putting out the hashtag content for all you Spotify enjoyers, and you can keep putting me on for your morning commute. Next week, I'm planning on doing a full MLB power rankings as we hit the halfway mark of the 162. Soon enough, I'm going to get a guest on for the MLB Hall of Fame tier list, just like I did with the NFL. If anybody's interested, reach out. Then I imagine I'll also have some more NFL roster moves and contract extensions / holdouts to cover. And beyond that, we will again go where the wind carries us in the sports world. Deal? This has been episode 14 of White Noise Sports with Tanner White. Thanks for tuning in.
And that ball is launched. You can forget about that.
I don't think that ball's come down yet. Made a good lane for Spooner with the backhander. That's nasty.
Smack to center, long run. Rottenberg, oh, she caught it.
Stop. That surely must be illegal.